Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you're calling in from around the world. We appreciate you taking the time to hear 1 hour chock full of really awesome information. We're really looking forward to speaking with John Oechsle of SwiftPage. He happens to be here located in the U.S. as I am. I'm at the headquarters of Global Chamber in Scottsdale, Arizona, and I'll be basically teeing up John, and then we'll be having questions. So it's about 30 minutes of information and 30 minutes for your Q&A. So as you have questions along the way, pop them into the chat area, and we're happy to field those. John Oechsle is an amazing tech CEO, and just listen to SaaS reports. He's rated as multi-years as a top CEO for tech companies, including this year. He's got 30 years of building emerging companies. He's the current CEO of SwiftPage. He's a graduate of Rutgers and also of Dartmouth. So he's got a great pedigree. He has been involved with all sorts of community activities as well, one of them being chairman of the Colorado Technology Association. So John, we really appreciate you taking the time today to talk about finding better leads, working your customers that you have already to turn those into leads. And I think it's particularly awesome that you would join us today on a day that the company has got some really exciting news, and you've actually got a huge press release around new products and new offerings for the marketplace. So thank you for taking the time, particularly on this day.
Oh, Doug, thanks so much for having me. Yeah, it's a huge day for us. I mean, today we are actually launching the next generation of ACT in North America. Tomorrow it'll go out in the rest of the world. So yeah, big day for us, and I'm happy that I can share some information with everybody.
Thank you.
So should we kick it off? Get going?
Let's go.
All right, sounds good. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hopefully everybody is settled in. As Doug said, we'll be talking for about 3.5 hours. So you guys, no, I'm just kidding. About 30 minutes, and hopefully we can pass along some great information, and you can take some nuggets away from you or away with you. So let's go ahead and get started. First and foremost, who is SwiftPage and ACT? I think Doug did a really good job of talking a little bit about the company. But what we do is we now, with the next generation of ACT, is we provide a single integrated platform combining CRM and marketing automation that is purpose-built for the small business, and it helps small businesses grow. We are a global company. We are headquartered here in Denver, Colorado, and we also have a very, very large operations center, North American operations center in Scottsdale, Arizona, and we have another large operations center over in Newcastle, UK. And we have some Swifties over in Chennai, India, and then a small contingent in the Ukraine as well. So we're kind of all over the place. We have just about 100,000 customers, 300,000 users. So what does that mean? That means every morning, over 300,000 people wake up every day and trust ACT to run their business in over 100 countries around the world. So when we talk about global, we have a lot of global experience, and hopefully we can share some of that with you. So first and foremost, over the next now 27 minutes, what will you learn today? 3 key takeaways. If you do anything today, write these down, because these are the 3 things that you will learn hopefully today and take away some really good nuggets. Number 1, you are only as good as your information. When we're talking about leads and we're talking about customers and customer information, if you don't have good information, you're not going to be that good. And we're going to talk to you today about how you can make sure that information is super good so that you can use that to drive your business. The second thing is, once you have that information, there is gold in them our hills. We're going to talk about how you can mine that data, your existing customers and prospects, and pull that out. It's a lot easier to do that with existing customers and prospects sometimes than going out and finding new customers, etc. So we'll talk about gold and Nundar Hills. And then at the end here, we need to talk about you need to get your technology act together. And no, this is not a shameless plug. I know I got my little coffee mug here for ACT, but anytime we use the word ACT, we have to put our product name in there. But anyway, you get your technology act together, because if you don't use technology correctly, it's actually going to hurt you with your information. So we're going to pull all of that together. We're going to have a bunch of fun over the next hour. And hopefully when we go away, we'll all be happy and have some things that we can take away. Okay? First and foremost, a bit of background on me. I played American football for 14 years, all the way up through college, was in a fraternity, etc. So why do I tell you that? If I forget who I am in the middle of this, you'll know the reason why. But anyway, back then I looked like this. Now I look like this, and I know what you're saying. You're like, Johnny, brother, what happened, man? You looked great back 30 some odd years ago. Well, what happened? 35 years have passed, so a lot happens in 35. 4 kids, 3 grandkids. Anybody that has kids and grandkids will know that will age you like crazy. It's a lot of fun, but it does put some years on you. But more importantly, I've spent the last 35 years of fixing and growing companies. I've fixed and grown Fortune 50 companies, where there's been large divisions of those companies. I've taken small companies and grown them. 2 times I've taken companies from under 100 million to over 2 billion, taken a couple companies public, etc. And through those years, I've done over 50 acquisitions. And a lot of those years have been really focused around the small business. And so hopefully what I can do today is take all of that experience, get it down into a couple of little nuggets that you can take away and hopefully use that to grow your business as well. So first, let's take a look at the market, the SMB market. We're going to focus on that market today because that's the one that I know the best, and talk about what we can do in that area. When we look at the SMB market, what we see is that every small business, and when SMB, and if you're international, you may hear it as SME. Sometimes we call it SME in Europe and Latin America, but it's really the small and mid-sized business or small and mid-sized enterprises. So every SMB needs 4 digital pillars in order to grow. So if you're thinking about your business and you're a small business, you need to think about these 4 pillars in order to go. We call them presence, traffic, conversion, retention, and optimization tools. Everybody knows what presence is, right? That's your website, that's your Facebook pages, LinkedIn, etc. What traffic does is traffic drives traffic to that presence, which creates leads. And then conversion and retention takes those leads, converts them to customers, retains them, and then helps to grow them. And then optimization tools are things like HR software, finance software, payment systems, etc. If you have those 4 pillars and you have them working together as a small business, you will be able to grow. So that's kind of the context of a lot of what we're going to be talking about today. Now, everybody always says that, oh, the SMBs, they're so unique. Well, how are they unique, etc. And they are unique, and they're unique because that a small business needs exactly what a large enterprise business needs. But the challenge is that they don't have the time. A lot of times they don't have the money, the expertise, or the resources to use all of the tools and things like that enterprises have. So they need all that, but they need it in a way that is easy, simple, and can be self-utilizing, and also they have to be cheaper than the enterprise. So so think about what is the uniqueness. They need exactly what enterprise needs is. They just need it in a very different level. So with that in context, that's the marketing context. Let's take a look at the very first thing that we're going to learn at, and that is you're only as good as your information. Now, if you've got a pen and paper, this is something that you need to write down. Or if you want to take notes on your computer or whatever, make sure you write this down, because if you walk away with anything today, you need to walk away with this, right? We're going to talk about what we call the 4 C's of information, right? The 4 C's of information are currency, correctness, consistency, and completeness. Now, first and foremost, if your information isn't current, guess what? It's not going to be any good. And if it's not correct, it's probably not current. So currency and correctness go together, right? If it's not correct, it's not current. If it's not current, it's not correct. If you don't even have those 2 C's done, you don't even have any place to start, right? So think about your information right now. Think about your customer information. Think about, your contacts, etc. and really just now say, oh my gosh, is it really current? Am I sure that I have that? Or is it correct? Do I have the correct email? Did somebody move, etc.? Those 2 C's are the version, and that's the foundation. If you get that correct, you can start building from there. Now, the third C is consistency. And consistency means that, if you go back to those 4 pillars that we just talked about, right? We have presence, traffic, conversion, retention, optimization tools. You have information all over the place, right? You have information probably in your finance systems. You probably have information in, spreadsheets or whatever. If that information is different, if it's not consistent across all of the places that you store your information, guess what? It's not going to be correct and it's not going to be current, right? So, and if you have that, then you're completely messed up. Then you don't know, am I working off the right information off of this system? Should I be working off of that system or whatever? The 4C is completeness. Now, everybody talks about completeness and they say, yeah, well, got to make sure you have, if they have 2 addresses, you have that. If you have 2 emails or different phone numbers and that kind of stuff. That is all really, really important information. But what you need to think about completeness is, do I have and have I captured every single interaction that I've done with my customer or my prospect or lead? Every single interaction. Whether it's a phone call, whether it's a sale, what's a service, I needed help in those. Every one of those interactions you need to have. That's completeness. If you have that kind of completeness, that will enable you to look at that and have much more intimate relationship with your customers and be able to continue to be out in front of their needs and keep them for a much longer time. So remember the 4 C's: currency, correctness, consistency, and completeness. If anything, please remember that as you leave today. Now, is there a 5th C, or could there be a 5th C? Let's get crazy today. It's launch day today. Let's throw out a 5th C, right? What would a 5th C be? A 5th C is what we're now calling connected. So go back to those 4 pillars, right? You have all of this information and all these different tools. The beautiful thing about our, today and the technology that we have today is that there are so many tools out there. And you know what? They're really, really good, and they're really cheap. And so a lot of small businesses are using all these different tools to run their business. Now, the challenge is you have information all over the place. That's where the 4 C's comes in. And if it's not connected, right, if you have information in optimization tools and it's not connected to your conversion retention tools, you're never going to be able to keep those 4 C's. So connected is the 5th C, and probably becoming one of the more important C's as we go forward. So that's the first thing. You're only as good as the information. Remember the 4 C's. Throw the 5th C in there if you're feeling crazy, and we'll, you'll be good. Okay, there's gold in them dollar hills, guys. So here's the thing. Now you've got all this information. You've got great information. You've got consistent information, complete information, etc. Now you need to use it. Now you need to go in there and take a look at it. At SwiftPage, one of the things that we have is a mantra. And we say that a unit, which we call a license of software, a unit sold or a unit renewed is a unit sold, right? So think about that. In your new mantra for your sales team is a customer that is renewed is a customer sold, or new something renewed or whatever. You have to think of it that way. It is so much easier to continue to service existing customers and keep existing customers than it is to go out and find new customers. So really go back in and really understand. Now, when you say, okay, I'm looking at my customers and I see, I got information, etc., but really start diving deeper into that and saying, okay, what are they buying? How are they using it? What other things can I offer them, etc. So those are the things. When we say there's gold in our hills, there is, but you have to dive into the hills, mine that information, pull that out, and really look at it. And I know it sounds, pretty much trivial, but it isn't. It's a lot of people don't do that, and they're more focused on getting new. Nothing wrong with getting new. You always have to grow your customer base. Don't forget about your existing customers. Let's drop back in and say, because everybody underestimates the value of their customer base, right? If you think about, like for us, we have 100,000 customers. That is so valuable. That's probably the most valuable asset that we have. is to continue to retain them, grow them, etc. You should think of the same way. You also probably have prospects. People have contacted you in the past or whatever. Don't underestimate that value, because it is so much easier to have a conversation with somebody that you've already connected with than to have some kind of a cold conversation, which then gets to the point of 3 metrics that you should be focusing on. These 3 metrics. Now, this is another important nugget. Make sure you write this down, etc. You need to be looking at customer acquisition costs. How much does it cost you to acquire a new customer? And those are things you need to take a look at. How much are your sales costs? How much marketing? If you're buying leads, etc. All that information you need, or all those costs you need to bring together, and then you divide that by how many customers you get, and that says, wow, that's how much it's costing me. If you really take a look at that, a lot of times you'll be like, oh my goodness, am I really focusing on the right set of customers, etc. I need to be tweaking on things. When you also look at that, you also know that, going back to just Golden Number Hills, it's a lot cheaper to go to existing customers and existing prospects than to go out and find some as well. So really, really track that. If you're not tracking that, make sure you start doing that. Another one is renewal rate. So renewal rates could be anything from if you offer subscriptions, do they renew? If they bought once, do they renew and buy again? Etc. So renewal rate is a very, very important metric. The way that we look at renewal rate, and this will give you an idea of maybe how you can do it as well. We have subscriptions. So every month there is a set of people, a set of customers that are up for renewal. And then every month a certain set of them renew and some don't, right? And so that becomes your renewal rate. So whether it's 85%, 90%, or et cetera, it's just how many are up for renewal versus how many have renewed. That's your renewal rate. And that's very, very important, because that will give you an idea of how well you're mining your customers, how well you're relating to your customers, et cetera. The better experience management, customer experience management, and customer success that you drive into your customers, the better you're going to have a renewal rate. Now, the flip side of renewal rate is churn, which is another extremely important metric that you need to take a look at. And churn is how many of your customers have gone away versus how many do you still have. So a little bit different than renewal rate. Renewal rate is how many people are up for renewal and how many renewed, versus churn, which is, okay, I have a certain base, i.e., for example, we have 100,000. We lost, this past month, X percent. That gives us a certain percentage of churn. So your churn is based off of your overall customer base. Your renewal rate is based upon how many people renewed that are up for renewal. So there's 2 sides of that coin, 2 very, very important metrics that you should be looking at. If you look at those 3 metrics, that will help you drive back into Golden Number Hills and your information, right? So all this is kind of tied together. So now what I would like to do is just take a minute. How are we doing on time? 13 minutes, awesome. We got a good time here. So let's talk about getting your technology act together. So we talked about information. We talked about mining that information and really staying focused with it, measuring some different metrics that you should be taking a look at. Now you have to take a look at your technology plan. If you're not using technology, you need to be using technology. And in today's day and age, almost everybody is using technology. Now, the challenge is, we talked about this earlier, there are so many tools out there, and they're really cheap, that a lot of us will go out and say, like, hey, let me go get this tool to do presence. Let me do this to traffic. Let me do these different tools or whatever. And you're using all these different tools. You have to really take a half a step back and really look at making a plan of saying, get that fifth seat. If a tools I'm not using cannot connect together, it's probably going to make my life even more difficult than not using that technology. So when you take a look across all 4 of those pillars, make sure you're getting tools that you can use that can connect with other tools. Make sure you're looking at things that have, you'll hear things like open APIs or open application programming interfaces. Or have the ability to connect, those type of things, or have relationships with other tool sets, so that if you use this one, you can push information into this one, etc. Take a step back, take a good look at all the technology that you're using right now and saying, is this technology really helping me, or is it putting more burden on me by forcing me to have to connect it myself, or it's making my information inconsistent, incomplete, and of course then we're not going to have currency and correctness. So from that standpoint, make sure you get your technology act together, but first and foremost, get your information right. You get your information right, then you can apply technology on top of that. So let's do a big recap if we could here. So we said we're going to have 3 key takeaways. Number 1, you're only as good as your information. Hopefully you took away that 4 C's, add that 5th C in. Make sure you remember that. There's gold in them hills. Make sure you go back and look at your information. The other thing I'm going to throw in here real quickly is that, take time, whether it's once a year, twice a year, or whatever, take the time to say, you know what, it's spring cleaning time. I'm going to go in and really look at my information and make sure that I have the 4 C's applied to that. Or maybe it's fall cleaning time or whatever. But really set aside that time and make it a very, very distinct effort that you do go in and take a look at that. And then lastly, as we said, we're going to get that technology act together. Make sure you take a look at that. Put your technology plan together. Make sure your technology talks together. Make your life easier. The technology should work for you. You shouldn't have to work for your technology. And then hopefully you had some fun. I know I had some fun. I like talking about like this, so I had some fun. But let's do a little bit of something else to learn one more nugget, if we would. Let's become, let me ask you a question. I know I can't hear you, but I'll feel you through the Zoom wave here. How would you like to be an honorary Swiftie? Right? How would you like to be one of the over 300,000 employees, partners, customers, et cetera, in over 100 countries, and be part of SwiftPage Nation? I know you're all shaking your head. Yeah. I want to do that. So first and foremost, if you want to be a Swiftie, right, which is what we call all of our employees. We're SwiftPage. We call all of our employees Swifties. These are the 4 things that you need to do. Now, Swifties do that, but if you think about your business and you think about your employees, et cetera, if you apply these types of characteristics, I think it'll also help you and your company grow as well. First and foremost, you got to be fast-paced. If you want to have a nickname like Swiftie, you can't be slow, right? So you got to be fast-paced. Think about your business. You've got to continue to move at a pace that is fast. The world is moving fast. You have to keep up with that as well. Now, because you move at a fast pace, you have to be innovative. And the reason why you have to be innovative is because when you're moving that fast, not everything is going to be completely lined up. And so you're going to have to be innovative in ways to think about how do I keep moving when not everything is already there in place. So you got to be innovative. Fearless. Everybody says, well, fearless means that I'm not afraid of anything. And the answer is no. Fearless means that you may be afraid of something, but you have the ability to overcome that fear and move forward. That's what fearless is all about. That's what Swifties do. And if you think about your business and everything that you do, if you can have the ability to overcome a fear and keep on moving forward, then you're fearless. And last, you got to be a winner. You got to wake up every morning and you got to say, hey, you know what? I have this insatiable, ubiquitous appetite that to win. I don't want to just play the game. I want to win. And losing is not an option, right? So if you have those 4 characteristics, you'll not only be an honorary Swiftie, but I think if you apply those to your business, you'll also make your business better as well. So with that, what I'm going to say is you are an honorary Swiftie. Welcome to the nation, baby. You're now part of SwiftPage Nation. And with that, I'm going to open it up for Q&A. How did I do on time? Right on time? Oh, man, perfect.
You're good. Really appreciate that. It's very rare that someone actually comes under the time, so we really, really appreciate that. Thank you, John. Really good information. Got a lot of questions. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
Awesome. So one of the 5 C's you talked about was completeness. And so the question coming in is the challenge that they're having is that either they or somebody on their team doesn't necessarily do what you described of putting like everything in the system, right? Especially people in sales, they're busy. They're talking to people, and so using a system and getting information all in there isn't always their highest priority. What do you suggest in those cases to make sure people use the system?
Yeah, great question. And you know what? As I go around the world and talk to groups like this and to customers and that kind of stuff, probably the number one question that I get all the time. So this is great. So two things. Number one is what that tells me is that the tools that you're using are a little bit more difficult than they need to be, right? And so now listen, as a company, we may not always have the choice of saying, I want to use this tool or whatever. A lot of times somebody else makes that decision and says, you must use that tool. And if that's the case, and it's like, okay, I'm really busy, I'm running from, sales call to sales call or whatever, and I don't have time to put all that information in because the system maybe isn't as easy to do that in. What I would suggest to do is that you have to put together a policy inside of your organization that says that I am going to set aside X amount of time, whether that's 30 minutes a day or whatever, to just put my information in. And I know it sounds crazy, but if you do that, the amount of value you will get out will be much more than the 30 minutes you spend doing that. And whatever the time period is, whether it's every day, whether it's once a week or whatever, set aside a time and say, okay, the information that I haven't put in, make sure keep good notes, etc. I need to get that information in because it will, remember, there's gold in the hills, but the information has to be in those hills in order to get that out. The second thing is that you really need to start looking at whether it's the tool you have or pushing back on and saying, maybe there should be another tool. Tools, again, should work for you. You shouldn't have to work for the tool. So, a lot of the tools that we have today have voice interaction. So if you're driving from one call to the next, you should be able to be talking to your system and getting that information in. So there's different ways that you can leverage in different tools. So look for different tools that make it much easier for you to do. Some tools will allow you to record a phone call and then mine that phone call and pull information out of that phone call and put into the system as well. So you need to start thinking about, when we talk about get your technology act together, look at those types of technologies that make it easier for you to put that information in. Sometimes it's a technology that's outside of the technology that you're using that you can make it easier, and then it'll integrate and push it into maybe your corporate standard, etc. So really good question, but as painful as it is, make the time to put that information in.
You're someone who not just knows SwiftPage, but you know a lot of different technologies, and you've been involved for 30 years. So you've got a great set of knowledge around what's out there. So could you explain more about who's the target for what you guys are doing? What does that company look like? What size? Where are they located? What industry? Are they product and service? Kind of what are some of the characteristics there? And then, outside of kind of your target, what other tools are out there that you see that are interesting and should be, maybe within the tool set of other companies?
Yeah, so great question. So our sweet spot, our targets are what we call the SMB, and we define that and we kind of break it down into 4 different subcategories. What we'll call the lower, middle, or upper small size business, and that's really kind of, think about a size of company of maybe about 100 employees is kind of in that area. And we go by the number of employees because the employees are very, very important versus revenue. A lot of times people will look at, is it 10 million or a million or whatever, and I'll talk why employees are so important. The next category we look at is what we call small, and that's probably that maybe 25 to 50, maybe even up to 100 area could be in that small area, again, employees. And then because we're so creative, the next area we call is small. And that's kind of really that 5 to 15 to 25 employees. Then the next is what we look at is individual business owner, or IBO, and that's really your 1 to 5. Right? So that's how we break down the market. And the reason why we do it in number of employees, because if you look at the number of employees, it's going to determine, do they have salespeople? Do they have marketing people? Or do they have people that are doing, multiple roles, et cetera? So we always say that what we do is we own the 1 to 10 seat space, not the 1 to 10 person company, but the 1 to 10 seats. And the 1 to 10 seats could be, salespeople, they could be, executives, they could be marketing people, they could be customer service people, etc. So, we obviously our CRM platform, and now with marketing automation, is a platform that really is geared towards, growing, converting, retaining, and growing your customers. So that's kind of the sweet spot that we have. We have different set of tools in our portfolio. If you're an IBO, we have things that'll get you started that are super, super simple. And if you're, a little bit more sophisticated, we have, tools that will continue to drive you up in that arena as well. So that's kind of our area. What's so beautiful about today is that I would say that the keys that people should be looking at today is platforms, technologies, not single tools. There are so much single tools out there. I think what you really need to take a look at is are there platforms that are, particularly if I'm in a small business, that are easy to implement and easy to use? And what a platform means is that it holds multiple tool sets, but more importantly, it can connect other tools to it. So, for instance, if you look at something in the conversion retention space, is there a platform that has CRM, marketing automation, and customer service or service management? One platform integrated, and oh, by the way, is easy enough to bolt on things like invoicing and payment systems and things along that line. So that would be the first thing that I would look at is, is there a platform versus, let me go buy a small little tool here that, is maybe $10 a month that I can run, but it's not a platform and I can't bolt anything onto it. So the second thing is what I think is really, really cool is that where the industry is going, and I'll get a little bit philosophical here for a second. Think about the amount of generations that are out there today. Right. So when I talk about generations, it's generations of people. So you have, obviously us old baby boomers, right, that have been around. Then you have the millennials and Gen X's and Gen Y's. And then you have another set that's coming out, which is called Gen Z. Right. And Gen Z generation are the youngest people of Gen Z are in middle school. The oldest people in Gen Z are just hitting the workforce today. Right. Think about that generation, and what they've grown up with. They don't know. They don't even know what a keyboard is. They don't know how to type with 10 fingers. They type with thumbs. They don't know how to do anything but, if they talk to something and it doesn't interact with them, they think there's something wrong with it. It's broken. They're completely connected, almost 7/24. And even when they're sleeping, sometimes they're connected, right? So think about that. And what's coming out in the industry today is this connected, different way of interacting with software across everything. It's not just CRMs, but it's across all software. If you think about the three most connected things that we have in our lifetime or in our life right now, are number one is your house. You think about your house, how you connect it. Now everybody thinks, well, I have a TV. Well, that TV is just a monitor that's connected to something, whether it's connected to Hulu, Netflix, whether it's connected to cable TV, etc. But it's connected to an enormous amount of content. You have your phone, right? Obviously, everything is, everybody knows that. That's connected to everything. It's probably wherever. And then the third most connected thing that you have is your car, right? So your car is connected to all kinds of stuff. Now, if you think about those three things and you start looking at tool sets that you need to, run your business, is the tool sets that you're looking at, can they be connected across all the things that you're connected with? Can you use that in your car? And what you have now is you have things like Amazon and Google or whatever are creating relationships with cars. You get in your car, you say, hey, Alexa, do this, right? Is the tool set that you're using connected to things like Alexa or Google or whatever? Can you do that from your obviously from your phone? If you can't use your technology from your phone, it's probably not the right technology that you should use. And then also, if you're, I don't know, can you talk into your television, or can you have that connected in your house as well? So anyway, that's a long-winded answer, Doug. I apologize, but that's probably one of the things that I'm most passionate about. We could have a whole seminar just on that.
So really, there's actually several questions came up related to that, so I'll tackle them one by one. Certainly one of them is, when you talk about integration and connectedness and having everything fixed together like that, I think a little bit like your age, and so I was part of an SAP implementation many decades ago, a couple decades ago, and that integration, to get that integration, it was very difficult to actually implement, and then getting people to use the system is really tricky. So I think you're talking about something different now, that maybe when technology has now evolved to the point where those types of integrations are being made easier than in the past, and maybe that's through the AIs or something. What is it that's making those integrations easy enough for people to digest?
Yeah, I think I've been in your camp too, so I've done a number of SAP implementations. That's why I don't have any hair. So I used to have hair when I did implementations like that. So, but yeah, I mean, so the technology out there right now is, so everybody is using open technology, whether it's REST-based APIs or different types. So there's all this open technologies that are out there. What that means is that it makes it very easy to almost do point and click type of integrations. And so that is so important when you're looking at a tool set, when you're looking at a partner or that you want to partner with. Understand that, are they using contemporary technologies that if you put them in, you don't have to have an IT staff or an IT consultant or somebody like that to come in to do a point-to-point integration between SAP and HubSpot or something along those lines, right? So you need to make sure that you're working with more contemporary technologies, and so the applications themselves over the last 3 to 5 years have just become it's table stakes that they're open, and that they have an open published API, and it's really about saying, I've got this API and this API, I'm just connecting the two APIs together, and that will happen. Now, but everybody's taking it to the next level. So it's not just application to application openness. It's now application to what I'm calling interaction openness, right? So that's that interaction, right? How can I interact with it? Can I interact with it through machine language or artificial intelligence? Can I interact with it via voice? God forbid if I interacted with it via, a keyboard, but I have to do that as well. So I think that, you've got all of that together, and that's really where if anybody that's on this call is in the software industry and creating software, if you're not thinking that way, you're behind the curve, because that's the way we all needed to start thinking about 3 years ago. And it's getting even crazier as we look out in the future.
Okay, there's a question kind of related to that, what you just brought up, the software industry. One of the things you talked about was looking at business as a renewal. And so what if you're not in the software industry and you've got a product or a service? Is there a way of, are you suggesting that they tailor their sales process into that type of an approach, or are you just really kind of recommending that for software companies?
I'm thinking about every type of company, and this is a different shift, right? So in my past world, I've been in technology companies, software companies. I've been in healthcare companies, consumer packaged goods, et cetera. And if you think about all of that, if you start mentally getting your sales process around, a sale and then a repeat sale, right? Which actually is just synonymous with a renewal, right? Absolutely, in the subscription world, renewals, everybody understands that. But more and more people are moving to the subscription mentality. I mean, if you look at, even today, you can go to, the Dollar Shave Club, right? So you can subscribe to every month, 5 razors show up at your doorstep, that type of thing. So in your business, whether it's a service, whether it's a lawn service or if, whatever, or if it's a consumer packaged goods or it's something, start thinking about, is there a way that I can make this repeatable? And if you can get to that point and get your sales process around and get your business processes lined up around that, then you can almost say like, okay, now I want to have what's called customer experience management. What's the experience that my customers are going to have, and how can I make that experience so good so that they're going to buy from me again or renew, right? So just think of it that way. So long-winded answer is no, it's not just the software industry that should be thinking about that. It should be every single industry. Anything that you do, you should be starting to think about, how can I move to that type of a business process.
Okay, so it's you're suggesting then setting up, if you will, an artificial renewal date, or that's probably not the right word, but basically at least changing to that mindset and then using tools like ACT to be able to facilitate monitoring that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, speaking of monitoring, one of the questions we have is from Professor Roberto Ensis. He's from the Western U.S. What tools do you have to track the timing of the data entry of your employees and affiliates? And is there some sort of a red, yellow, green analysis, or is there some other way to identify? So this kind of goes back to a little bit about what we started, right? The real challenge of, are people going to use the system? So is there a way of tracking that?
Yeah, there absolutely is. And so, if I talk a little bit about what we do, and then also, what other tools do, et cetera. So inside of ACT, there are what's called workflow engines, right? So you can set up a workflow that says, once a salesperson does this or has this call, then they need to do this, which then drives an activity, which then that activity gets put on somebody's calendar. And then you can see if that activity is complete, et cetera. So, we have all those kind of things. And that same workflow engine, by the way, works with marketing campaigns, right? If you send out a marketing campaign and, say, okay, did this person open that email? Yes, then do this, et cetera. So it's a kind of a decision workflow, or what we like to call a customer journey. But inside, you can do that as well. So, the tool sets that are out there, you really need to make sure that there's things that can track the progress of what people are. And if the progress isn't there, if you don't see it, then shoot an activity onto somebody's calendar or whatever, and then make sure that that they do that, and then click that activity is complete or whatever. So there are a lot of technologies that are out there. Now the key is just, you got to have a business process. So the technology is great, you can automate all of that, but then you have to have a business process to say, what happens if that person doesn't do that? But you at least you'll be able to get that information back now and say, okay, listen, I'll pick on Mallory here because she's sitting next to me. It's like, hey, Mal, you have not been doing this. You've been having these calls. You're supposed to be doing this. These 5 activities aren't going to be done. You need to then take action, whether that's Mal's not the right person for that job, or are we doing something, et cetera. So those are the types of things that I would look for. Look for workflow engines, activity management engines, et cetera. Those are the types of tools that you need to track this.
Okay, so presumably we should be looking at reporting mechanisms, both for the person using the system and then within the group. Is that something that you'd recommend, and how do we approach that part of it?
Yeah, so now now you open up a whole can of worms, which I'm really excited about, because this is another great topic that I love to talk about, right? So reporting, and I'm going to say that reporting is probably not a good term that we should use anymore, and I think we should use about how do we leverage the insight that we have inside of all of these tools and all of this information, right? So the key that you should take a look at, and whether they're dashboarding tools or whatever, you need to create a console. And that console should be the thing that you go into every single day. Now, inside of ACT, we have what we call ACT Insight. So if you go all the way back to the 4 C's of information, the connectedness with everything. So if you do all this right, if you get your technology act together and you got your 4 C's, you're going to have this enormous amount of information. Now, what do you do with that? You got to be able to pull that out and make decisions upon that, right? And so what you need to be looking at is make sure that you have a tool set that enables you to do that, but not in a way that you have to go in and say, oh my God, I need to take a 5 credit course in data science to be able to program to pull this information out. It needs to be point and click, right? It needs to be able to say like, okay, I've got this information, I want to see it this way, and I want it to be presented that way, etc. And that's what I'm calling a console. It's a set of dashboards. So if you think about like Act Insight, when you walk into Act Insight and you have that console, it right away tells you, how many opportunities do I have? What stages are they in? How many calls have my sales reps met? Is their information up to date, etc. So you can see all these dials. And then based on those dials, you say to yourself, okay, I need to dive deeper into this. So you should be able to click on that, dive deep into that, and that information comes in. So that's what I think is really, really important. So look for, tools that have that kind of capability, visually extracting insight out of the information and presenting it to you in a very, very easy way. Now, the next step on that is, great, I got all this information, and it's visually in place. I can see it, real time. Now where you need to go and where the whole industry is going is, what do I do about it? Right? Instead of me having to interpret and say, okay, now let me dive in and analyze all this, software is now coming to with artificial intelligence recommendation architectures, recommendation engines are saying, based upon what you're seeing, you should do this, this, and this. And that's really what, when you look for different tool sets, if you look at that, that's the holy grail, right? That's what you want to do to be able to say, oh man, this took place. Now I need to do this, this, and this. That's when you really, really get to the point where the software is working for you, you're not working for the software.
In the integration and the slide that you used, it showed Twitter and Facebook. It didn't show LinkedIn, but the slide that you're showing right now is LinkedIn. So a lot of salespeople use LinkedIn. So are there integrations with ACT that work there? And how would you normally suggest, because it seems like a lot of our members do end up using LinkedIn in particular.
Yeah, so LinkedIn is and all those tools, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, all that kind of stuff, Instagram, that kind of stuff. Any tools that you have, if they don't allow you to interact, push information, pull information from those, is probably not going to help you out with your 4 C's of information, particularly completeness, right? Because that's where you're going to get all of those interactions. So yeah, now I would tell you that some of those tools are easier to integrate with than others, you need to, as a software provider and as a software vendor, we have to make sure that we keep very good relationships with them, because they can cut you off really easy. It's a given right now that if you're using a tool and you want to be able to say, oh man, all this, just push this and should go through my entire social channels. You need to have that. And oh, by the way, if people land on my social channel or interact with me on my social channel, that needs to come back in as well. Super, super important. If you don't do that, that's the 5th C, right? When we talk about connected. If you don't do that, you're not going to have completeness for sure.
Gotcha. Are there metrics around the completeness? And could you also talk a little bit more about consistency? How do you know you're being consistent? How does that work, and who does that?
Yeah, so consistency is a hard one, because normally what happens with consistency is you don't realize you're not consistent until you realize that you're not current or correct. And that usually results in a bounce, right? A bounce of an email, a bounce of hey, I called this number and it doesn't exist anymore. Or God forbid, I sent a piece of snail mail to something and it came back, or I went to visit them and they were not there anymore. So, those are the consistency. So what I would suggest, and there's different various, if you're a little bit larger company, you may already have this or whatever, but you have to create a role which we call the data steward, right, or the information steward. And that person is the person that's responsible for taking a look at, where's all my information, do we have it connected, et cetera. Now, if you're a 1 or 2 person company, guess what? That's going to be you, and you're just going to have to set the time out. What I tell folks that are in in zones that do daylight savings time is, in North America, they say every time the clock changes, fall back, spring forward, is to go change your batteries in your smoke detector, right? Well, you know what? Set that same time. Every time the clock's changed, that's when I got to go in and make sure my information is consistent or whatever. So just set that time, whether it's twice a year, whether it's every quarter, once a month, or etc. But give that role to somebody or to a group of persons that says, you need to take a look at that. There's I don't know if there's too many automated tools that you can do that. If you're using data warehouse technology, that you're extracting information to a data store out of all these tools and then trying to run stuff off of that, your extract, transport, and load technology will tell you you're inconsistent, but that's probably more for sophisticated type of companies, and the small businesses probably don't have those types of tools.
Very good. You mentioned data mining, and so here's another question that's come in. The measurement of number of employees may be less important now than in the past, given that there are many companies or have associated networks that they've built, and I think even part of your network globally is that way. Are there data mining and tools available that kind of look at how to handle in a better way these virtual companies, if you will?
Yeah, so that's the beautiful thing about the world today is software runs in the cloud, and the cloud is everywhere, right? And so what I would suggest is that as you're looking for tools, and as you're utilizing tools, if you're using tools that are need to be implemented inside of your four walls, it's going to be more difficult for you to be able to work as a virtual company, because there could be tools in one set of four walls, etc. So look for tools that are cloud-based, that everybody has access to, and then now you might have a need for you to work with them offline, etc. So if they have the ability to work offline and online, that's a fantastic thing that not everybody has. A lot of people are just focused in the cloud, etc. So a differentiator could be that you can work offline as well. So then again, now if you got virtual companies, it's even more important that you define your roles. That you really say that we're going to focus on the 4 C's, and somebody is responsible for looking at consistency across all of these. Most of the time, the tools that you have that run in the cloud, you will know who is on, who's doing what, etc. So, for instance, inside of ACT, you have the ability to see who put that piece of information in, who updated that information, where did it come from, etc. So if you have that type of access to the tool, that will enable you to have a much more successful virtual company around, because you'll know exactly where it is. If something's not going right, you can go back and say, hey, that's not right, let's fix that, or God forbid, let's shut that person off and don't let them put any more information in because they can't do it right.
Yeah, somebody from it must be from Arizona has asked the question, hey, the 5 C's, we like them here in Arizona. Any idea what the 5 C's are for Arizona? There's actually 5 C's of Arizona that people in Arizona all know. Have you traveled enough to AZ to know at least 1 or 2 of them?
Yeah, I am in Arizona at least every other week because we have such a large operations center down there. I do know, somebody did tell me that the other day, that there are the 5 C's, but I can't think of one right now. So if somebody knows that, please, my contact information was up there. Shoot that to me. I would love to know.
So we actually have them. So it's copper, climate, citrus, cattle, and cotton. Those are the 5 Arizona C's, believe it or not. Yeah. So only people from Arizona really know that. Yours, you talked about the 4 C's, but really 5 C's: currency, correctness, consistency, completeness, and then connected. I think those are the 5, right?
Correct.
We're running out of time, probably maybe one or two more questions before we do run out of time. Could you talk a little bit about, what happened this morning with the release? What's happening and what should people be aware of there? And then, of course, let us know if somebody really wants to jump into Swifty Nation. We understand that at Global Chamber. We call our followers Globies. The Globies understand each other. We are all on the same page. I'm assuming Swifties are the same way. So what happened this morning with Swift Page and ACT? And then, how does somebody get involved to be a Swifty? Where do they go?
Oh man, this morning was probably the most exciting thing. We Swift Page have owned the ACT brand now since 2013. We acquired it in 2013. And we've really taken it across the journey of three distinct eras: transformation, conversion, and now growth. The transformation was when we acquired the ACT brand, which, by the way, the ACT brand has been around for 30 years. I mean, it is a very well-known brand. It was the first CRM back in 1987. And then it's still continued to be very relevant throughout the years, which is very difficult for a brand and a company to be able to do that. But anyway, we picked it up in 2013. We transformed it from a closed desktop system into an open cloud-enabled platform, and have really been doing a lot in that over the last years to make it a very purpose-built CRM, customer relationship management, for the small business. So it's got the most functionality for the small business that you could possibly get. If you get all the way back to the uniqueness of the SMB, right? We talked about the SMBs need everything that an enterprise does, but it has to be easy and it has to be, relatively cost-effective, et cetera. And that's really what our CRM does. Now, what we did this morning is we went to the next generation. What we always say is that the ACT brand, we are really focusing on owning what we call conversion and retention. That's converting leads to customers, retaining them, and growing them, which is a little bit broader than just CRM, right? But we do believe that CRM is the anchor of conversion and retention. But there's two other legs to the stool. There's marketing automation and service management. And so today what we did is we launched the next generation of ACT, which is a single integrated platform that has both CRM and marketing automation in it. So we have two legs of the stool as far as really owning the conversion and retention space, and we do have a lot of connections with service management tools as well, so we can plug those in too. So we're really excited about it. We call it the ACT Growth Suite, which is leveraging both CRM and marketing automation to really grow your business, and again, it's purpose-built for the SMB, which is, there's not a lot of software that's out there that has just the small business in mind. So really excited. We do two big launches a year. We do what we call a fall launch and the spring launch, and so this is the fall launch for 2018, next generation of ACT. We're super excited. All the Swifties are celebrating today. We all have, I got my orange tie on, and all the Swifties in all the locations all got, T-shirts, and we're having, cakes and that kind of stuff. So it's a real big deal for us today in North America, tomorrow in the rest of the world. Look for ACT Next Generation. You want to check it out? Pretty simple. Just go to act.com, ACT.com. We made it as simple as we possibly could. Go there, act.com, and you'll see all the information about how you can get involved with the next generation of ACT.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you so much for your time. I mean, we do these events with Global Chamber regularly, at least every week, and sales obviously is a key thing that we all struggle with. We all need help with, and so thank you for enlightening us. And certainly some of the takeaways, like the 5 C's, are critically important for all of us. So John, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Any last comments you'd like to make?
Doug, thanks so much for having me. It's been a blast. I love doing this. Get yourself. Remember the C's. Go mind those hills. There's gold on those hills, and then also just get your technology act together. So keep that in mind. Hopefully you're taking something away today and it's useful. I'd love to hear from you if you were able to use something that we talked about today.
So if you don't have John's contact information or how to get into Swift Page and to ACT, act.com is pretty simple. Try that. And if you have any challenges and you're a member of Global Chamber, just email us at info@globalchamber.org, and we'll be happy to connect you. I'd like to say that Our next Globinars, we've got 3 of them in the next couple weeks. So the next one is about buying and selling a business across borders. That's on the 16th. We've got one with exporters. And they're going to tell their story, both successes and challenges. That's on the 20th. And then I believe on the 29th, we're talking about the global construction and infrastructure market. Infrastructure projects are happening all the time, and there are many companies that want to be more connected to those. And so we have some of our members who are involved on that side of it. Stay tuned, because Globinars are on topics that we all struggle with, whether it's sales today or legal or banking, financial, logistics, marketing. All of these things are things that are not always straightforward when you're dealing with businesses in other cities and other places around the world. So thank you all for attending today. Thank you again, John, and have a great day wherever you are, or sleep well if you're over somewhere else right now. Take care.